June 21st, 2012, high on the unforgiving flanks of Mount Rainier, 4 climbers stood on the summit, laughing, hugging, believing the worst was behind them. You can almost feel the relief in the photographs they took that morning. Brilliant blue sky, the curve of the earth far below, the taste of victory after weeks of planning and days of punishing effort. But what none of them realized as they turned to begin the long descent was that the mountain had only just begun to fight back. In the next few hours, every single one of them would come within seconds of death, and the man who raced to save them would pay the ultimate price. Meet the 5 friends who flew into Seattle full of fire and ambition. Ross Van Dyke, the quiet admissions counselor from Texas, who had been haunted by this mountain ever since bad weather forced him to turn back the year before. Stuart Smith, the calm Everest veteran attorney who everyone trusted with their lives. His niece Noel, fresh out of high school and hungry to prove herself. Stacy Wren, the tough Baylor senior who had trained for months in the Colorado Rockies. And Claire Culkin, the one who would ultimately make the decision that saved her life. These weren't reckless beginners. Stuart had stood on the roof of the world. Ross had studied every weather report like his life depended on it, because it did. They picked the single 3-day window in June when forecasts looked perfect. They hired no guides. This was meant to be their mountain, their story. And for a little while, everything felt exactly right. You know that moment when you finally break through the clouds and the world drops away beneath you? That's what the first day felt like. They pushed past the popular Camp Muir, past the tourists taking selfies, all the way to a lonely ledge called Sherman Flats at nearly 10,000 feet. Tents pitched on a glacier, stars so bright they hurt to look at. Ross snapped a selfie with the others grinning behind him. The sea of cloud far below, like a frozen ocean. The air was thin, but the mood was electric. They were exactly where they wanted to be. That night, Claire admitted she wasn't feeling right. Altitude, exhaustion, maybe something worse. She couldn't tell. After a long, painful group talk, she made the call no one wanted to hear. She would stay behind at Sherman Flats with binoculars and watch the others go for the summit. The remaining 4 kissed her goodbye at dawn, roped together, crampons biting into bullet-hard ice, and disappeared upward into a world of white and blue. 6 brutal hours later, you would have seen 4 tiny figures hugging on the crater rim at 14,411 feet. They had done it. Noel, the youngest, screamed into the wind. Stacy later said it was the hardest thing she'd ever forced her body to do. Ross's iPhone captured it all: the joy, the exhaustion, the sense that nothing could touch them now. They spent barely an hour up there. The mountain allows no lingering, and that's when the first invisible mistake was made. 1,000 feet below the summit, on a knife-edge traverse above the Emmons Glacier, the rope team ran out of pickets, the metal stakes you hammer into the ice and clip the rope through to stop a fall. Stuart, leading, reached a safer bench. Ross and Noel followed. Stacy, bringing up the rear, was still on the steepest, iciest section. They were tired. They were eager to get down. Someone, no one is sure who, suggested they pull the last picket and just be careful for the final 30 feet. Stacy felt the fear crawl up her spine, but she was the youngest, the only woman on the rope now, and she didn't want to be the one who slowed everyone down. She swallowed it. "Yeah," she said, "let's just go." 2 steps later, her crampon scraped across glare ice and found nothing to bite. She swung her ice axe desperately, trying to self-arrest the way you're taught 1,000 times in classrooms and on practice slopes. But on that polished, wind-scoured surface, the pick skittered uselessly. In a heartbeat, she was accelerating. A human missile on a 45-degree slope. Because they were roped together, the fall became a chain reaction. Stacy's 130 pounds turned into a freight train. Noel was ripped off her feet next, then Ross, then Stuart. 4 bodies, 1 rope, suddenly sliding as a single unit toward oblivion. You need to understand what was waiting below them. A crevasse the size of an apartment building, its upper lip shaped like a ski jump. Ross remembers thinking clear as day. "This is how I die. Tell my wife I love her." Stacy felt an eerie calm, the kind you read about in near-death accounts, as the edge rushed up to meet them. They launched into the air, still tangled together, flying 10, maybe 15 feet above the abyss. By every law of physics, they should have dropped straight into the slot and vanished forever. Instead, the impossible happened. They cleared the crevasse entirely and slammed down on the far side like a car wreck. Ice axes finally bit. The slide screeched to a stop, blood in their mouths, bones screaming, but alive. Then someone noticed the rope going tight in a direction it shouldn't. Noel was gone. They found her 30 feet away, dangling upside down in a smaller crevasse, held only by the rope around her waist, in a twist that still haunts them. Noel's accidental fall into that second slot was the anchor that finally stopped the whole team from sliding thousands more feet to their deaths. A lone climber from Montana saw the carnage and scrambled over. Ross dragged his dislocated leg uphill until he found 2 bars of signal and screamed into his phone for help. Rangers told him 90 minutes. 90 minutes on Rainier can be a lifetime. Down at Paradise, 4 climbing rangers threw gear into a Chinook helicopter and launched into the sky. One of them was Nick Hall, 33 years old, strong as an ox, beloved by everyone who ever roped up with him. Nick's job was the hardest of all. He would perch on that 35-degree ice slope in 40-mile-an-hour rotor wash, wrestle injured climbers into a litter, and hand them up to the helicopter hovering overhead. You've seen rescue videos. You think you know how it looks. You don't know Rainier. As the helicopter lowered the litter, a violent gust rocked the ship. Nick reached out to steady the stretcher, and his crampons skated on the same glare ice that had nearly killed the Texans hours earlier. In front of Rangers watching from above, Nick Hall slid out of control, accelerated, and launched off a 30-foot ice cliff into the clouds below. Radio traffic went dead quiet for 1 heartbeat. Then a voice, flat with horror. "We've lost Hall." They never even heard him scream. Ross, Stacy, and then Stewart were airlifted out one by one. Stacy, least injured, had to spend a freezing night on the mountain with 2 rangers while a blizzard closed in. She begged them to dig a snow cave and leave her. She was done, she said. They refused. The next morning, in total whiteout, they guided her down on foot through waist-deep powder and 100-foot visibility. All 4 Texans lived, battered, broken, forever changed, but alive. 2 weeks later, when the weather finally cleared, a helicopter returned to the Emmons Glacier. Rangers found Nick Hall's body 2,400 vertical feet below where he fell, roughly the height of the Burj Khalifa's 144th floor. He had died on impact. The National Park Service investigation was brutal in its honesty. Nick hadn't carried an ice axe that day, standard on every other rescue, but somehow left behind in the frantic rush to save the Texans. There were only 4 rangers for 4 patients. Communication broke down, fatigue, high wind, and that cursed glare ice combined into a perfect storm. You can read the report if you want the cold details, but reports don't capture the emptiness in a ranger station when one of your own doesn't come home. They don't capture Stacy Wren waking up screaming years later because she still feels the rope yank her off her feet. They don't capture Ross staring at the summit photo on his phone and wondering why he's alive, and Nick isn't. Mount Rainier has now taken more than 430 lives since records began. Many of those deaths happened on the descent, when legs are jelly, concentration slips, and the mountain smells blood in the water. The universal truth no one wants to say out loud is this: the moment you believe you've beaten the mountain is the moment it starts to win. Nick Hall's ashes were scattered on the very slopes he died, trying to make safer for people like you and me. Every time the wind screams across the Emmons Glacier, it carries a warning older than any of us. Respect is not enough. Caution is not enough. Even love for these wild places is not enough. On Rainier, the smallest mistake, the tiniest lapse, the single second you let exhaustion or pride make the call can turn the happiest summit day of your life into the last day of someone else's. And the mountain never, ever apologizes.